He was the charismatic commander of British forces in the First Gulf War and Stormin Norman's right-hand man. A man of action, he had an incredible career, rising from private to general, even commanding the legendary SAS. Today, we're looking at the life, campaigns, and most importantly, the medals of Sir Peter de la Billière. De la Billière's impressive set of ribbons include 5 decorations for gallantry or distinguished service, some awarded multiple times, 4 campaign medals, some with multiple clasps, a UN medal, a Jubilee medal, and 3 foreign awards. There are also other medals that he was entitled to, and we'll touch on that later. So, who was he? According to his biography, de la Billière was born in April 1934 in Plymouth, England. His ancestors were French Huguenots who came to England in the 1600s, hence the French surname. His father was a surgeon officer in the Royal Navy, whom he saw little of, being deployed at sea often. During World War II, tragically, his father was recorded as missing, presumed dead, after his ship, HMS Fiji, a light cruiser, was sunk by German aircraft during the Battle of Crete in May 1941. Of the 900 crew, around 240 lost their lives. The loss of his father would have a profound emotional impact on the young de la Billière, and a wider financial impact on the family. During World War II as a child, he lived in Kent for a time, under the flight path of German bombers. Listening to the sounds of the engine pitches of the planes overhead, he stated, "In time I became skilled at identifying British and German types of aircraft." Attending boarding school at St Peter's Prep and then Harrow, de la Billière, more swashbuckler than scholar, struggled academically, and it's likely he may have suffered from an undiagnosed form of dyslexia. He found release in shooting, playing truant, and generally breaking as many school rules as he could. In his last year, he pulled his socks up and managed to pass with 2 distinctions and 2 credits, scraping through in maths. Dreaming of adventure and travel and not wanting to stay on and study, he left school. I left Harrow, not quite 17, to sighs of relief from the staff, not least my headmaster, whose personal efforts to improve my handwriting had ended in almost total failure. During that time his mother had remarried, but the relationship didn't work out. Returning home, now to Shropshire, the family home, in October 1951, tragedy struck on a day when he discovered his mother passed out on the floor, having suffered carbon monoxide poisoning from a boiler. I dashed down, seized her by the arms, and dragged her bodily up the steps, choking in acrid fumes. Suffering brain damage from lack of oxygen, his mother would require constant care. Like all men of that era, de la Billière expected to soon be drafted to perform 2 years compulsory national service. He decided to join the Merchant Navy instead, but failed the medical. Bouncing back from this disappointment, rather than wait around until he was 18 to be drafted, he decided to sign on as a private for the regular army for a period of 3 years. Volunteering for service would give him the opportunity to travel, and he could choose a regiment on active service. The Korean War was then in its 2nd year, and de la Billière's aim was to join a regiment which was fighting in it, the King's Own Shropshire Light Infantry. Around the time of his application, he also started to hear stories regarding the mysterious Special Air Service, and decided to apply for this organisation once he had done his time with the Shropshires. Like many young men joining the armed forces on their first day, he expressed nervousness. He stated, "When I walked through the high imposing gates of Copthorne Barracks on the outskirts of Shrewsbury on the morning of the 2nd of January 1952, I seemed to have little going for me. My father was dead, my mother in hospital, my aunt and grandmother alienated, my home sold, my own family scattered, my education prematurely cut off. No wonder I went to a new life with a feeling of quite some foreboding." After a couple of weeks' dead time waiting for the new intake to fill up, training began. Although he resented the drill and army bull, de la Billière took to the outdoor life, especially the shooting. After 6 weeks training, he would be put in front of a selection board and chosen for officer training and sent to Strensall near York, where potential officers from all light infantry regiments were sent at that time. After further training near Chester, he was later commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Durham Light Infantry and deployed to Japan. Made up of many ex-miners and other tough, gritty characters from the northeast of England, the DLI, or Durham Light Infantry, was an old-standing, proud traditional regiment. For our foreign viewers, basically Geordies, but with a softer accent than Gazzers. First arriving in Japan for pre-deployment training, he left for Korea on his 19th birthday. De la Billière described life on the front line. Like badgers, we lived in holes deep underground and slept by day, emerging into the open cover of the darkness. Since many of the Durham soldiers were miners, they could outperform everyone else when it came to digging, and we prided ourselves that our earthworks were the finest in the line. Speaking of Korea and how it shaped his thoughts on leadership, he stated, "When I was a second lieutenant, I went out to Korea, and I saw casualties in substantial numbers. I saw a third of my own platoon killed or wounded. More than that, actually. And I saw that casualties could be avoided with good leadership, good management, and careful planning. I've felt ever since then there could never be any excuse for any commander squandering the lives of other people, however justified the cause." With a ceasefire declared in July, de la Billière then returned to his regiment, travelling via troopship. Deployed to the Middle East, he served in the Canal Zone in Egypt, in part of what was in effect the British Army of Occupation. He was also sent on detachment for 4 months to Jordan, based in Aqaba. Here he developed a love for the Middle East. In 1956, he persuaded his commanding officer to let him apply for SAS selection. The SAS, or Special Air Service, are the elite special forces of the United Kingdom, and in my opinion, as a biased Brit, the finest special forces in the world. De la Billière passed selection. He declared, "In 1956, I transferred to the Special Air Service, and it was with them over the next 20 years that I repeatedly became involved in Arabian operations, most of them covert." De la Billière's first major deployment with the Special Air Service was to Oman in the late 1950s, where Britain was supporting the reigning Sultan against rebel tribes. His unit was tasked with locating and capturing, or eliminating, dissident leaders. These fighters were hiding in the rugged terrain of the Jebel Akhdar Mountains. In a daring assault, de la Billière led his men in scaling 6,000-foot cliffs under intense enemy fire to attack a rebel position believed to be impregnable. Their success was decisive, and the rebellion quickly collapsed soon after. For his courage and leadership during the operation, he was awarded the Military Cross. A swashbuckling thruster, de la Billière was not a man to swan around and lounge around the officers' mess, and brushed off creature comforts, unlike some officers. De la Billière stated, "Since my earliest days in the army, I had maintained the practices of taking a run and a cold bath before breakfast." Around this period, he also served in Malaya, conducting counterinsurgency operations during the Malaya Emergency, which lasted until 1960. At some point, he was also awarded a mention in dispatches. He described operating in the jungle in teams of 12 for long periods at a stretch, even as much as 4 to 5 months, living off air resupply every 3 weeks or so. In a strenuous environment involving constant patrolling, he soon honed his leadership skills even further. As a junior officer, he felt tremendous independence, sending back a sit rep every night and spending time in the jungle getting to know his soldiers, where rank was much less relevant. Then, after a short stint as an adjutant overseeing the SAS reserves in London, in 1962, de la Billière was posted on loan service as an intelligence officer, or IO, to the Yemeni Federal Regular Army. He said, "It was here that I came to know Arabs well, to appreciate their fine culture and way of life." More importantly for his future career, he also gained a colloquial grasp of Arabic. This was during the period known as the Aden Emergency. As part of their empire, the British aimed to maintain control of Aden in Yemen, a strategic key port, but faced rising Arab nationalist and communist-backed insurgencies. Supported by Nasser's Egypt, insurgent groups like the National Liberation Front and Front for Liberation of Occupied South Yemen attacked British forces, police and local allies. During this period, fighting a relatively unsophisticated enemy who were largely illiterate and well before the era of mass telecommunications such as mobile phones, the British Army would have relied primarily for intelligence collection methods, human intelligence. So this would have involved, for example, interrogating defectors, prisoners who they'd captured, looking at key leaders, so going to negotiate with people or doing engagement with persons of influence, as well as relying on trying to find tidbits of information from, say, bizarre gossip, or trying to conduct atmospherics in the town, seeing what's going on. This was a way of finding information that could be then effectively processed into intelligence, which could be actionable. During this period, de la Billière would be promoted to captain and then major. He would also run combat survival courses in the region, including capture and interrogation. Between 1964 and 66, he commanded A Squadron, Special Air Service, first in Yemen and then afterwards in Borneo. In Yemen, his unit was part of the Radfan, operating in the volatile Radfan area north of Aden. The Special Forces operated in reconnaissance, long-range patrols and direct action against insurgent positions. De la Billière's experience here further sharpened his skills in asymmetric warfare and leadership in hostile terrain, which would later prove vital in Oman and the Gulf War. In the mid-1960s, he would get married to his new wife Bridget and go on to have 3 children. Like most military couples, they would spend long periods apart. Clearly not a man cut out for stamp collecting or model railways, in his spare time, de la Billière took up the hobbies of beekeeping and carpentry. In 1970, he would once again be deployed with the SAS to conduct operations in Dhofar and other global hotspots. The most significant was a lengthy operation in the early 70s in Oman, fighting a communist-led insurrection. In Oman, the SAS were involved in an operation involving a night parachute drop and seaborne attacks on guerrilla strongholds in the strategically vital Musandam Peninsula. In 1972, at the age of 37, he took over as commanding officer of 22 SAS Regiment, before becoming a General Staff Officer at Staff College for a 2-year posting. Afterwards, he was then assigned to the Sudan as commander of the British Army training team attached to the Sudanese Army. A man of adventure, he reportedly took his wife and 3 children on a 4-day transit across the Nubian desert in a Land Rover in the desert heat to get there, making his special forces exploits pale in comparison. Surely keeping his kids occupied in the back seat for 4 days before the advent of video games and iPads must be an incredible achievement. After this 20-month tour, he was then posted as commander of the SAS service group. It was during this period that the SAS shot to public fame as a consequence of their storming of the Iranian embassy in 1980. With the outbreak of the Falklands War, de la Billière was involved in planning Operation Mikado. This was a daring plan involving Special Forces troops to attack the home base of Argentina's Atendard strike fighters and Exocet missiles at Rio Grande Tierra del Fuego. It was planned that a team of around 55 SAS troopers would be flown in directly to the airbase in 2 Hercules aircraft. They would then take out the fighters on the ground. This would eliminate the threat to the Royal Navy Task Force operating off the Falklands. However, a preliminary reconnaissance mission, Operation Plum Duff, failed when an SAS Team Seeking helicopter crashed in Chile, and they were unable to gather vital intelligence on the Rio Grande airbase. As a result, the operation was cancelled. After the war, de la Billière was appointed military commissioner and commander of British forces of the Falkland Islands from 1984 to 85. He then returned to the UK to the position of General Officer Commanding Wales in 1985. In 1987, he was appointed Knight Commander of the Order of the Bath. In 1988, he moved on to General Officer commanding the South East District and then Permanent Peacetime Commander, Joint Forces Operations Staff. As a Lieutenant General, he was about to retire in 1990 and look forward to a life outside involving farming and butchering, and also planning a yachting trip to New Zealand. Then Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, stating that the love of a challenge and of campaign had shaped the course of my life. Billière offered to delay his retirement, a decision that led to his appointment as commander of UK forces in the Middle East. Clearly, the qualities that aided de la Billière obtaining the role were outstanding leadership, extreme proficiency, and familiarity with the Middle East. However, another critical asset for qualifying as a buccaneering legendary mid to late 20th century British military commander was having a pair of beefy, bombastic, bushy eyebrows. For the squaddy in theatre, knowing their leader was sporting a pair of these manly browbeaters would add at least the value of a battalion in morale to the overall fighting strength. When he packed for the Gulf, de la Billière took with him a small radio, family photograph, and a dagger-shaped paper knife letter opener given to him by the Australian SAS. As a man of action who liked to rough it with his men, he was surprised when instructed to bring a dinner jacket. Like thousands of British servicemen over the years, he would travel to theatre on the good old RAF TriStar. Arriving in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, de la Billière expected to be taken to a fortified bunker complex or command centre, but instead, to his surprise, was driven to the luxury Hyatt Hotel. He was booked into a suite with a complimentary fruit bowl. Having a lifelong distaste for hotels, which struck him as an artificial form of living, he said to his staff, "For Christ's sake, let's get out of here as soon as we can. Start looking for somewhere else tomorrow." De la Billière always made the habit of not drinking alcohol when on operations. Because British servicemen in Saudi Arabia were forbidden alcohol, de la Billière would not touch any booze in theatre for 6 months, determined not to enjoy a privilege that his men couldn't share. We've covered the British military build-up for this war on my video on the Battle of Norfolk, so we won't go into it. Clearly, this was a Herculean task. He stated, "The British contingent of 45,000 men and women, though less than a tenth of the size of American forces, was nevertheless the third largest element in the coalition, after America and Saudi Arabia." He was instrumental in obtaining greater operational autonomy for the British once they expanded their force to a division, and relocating away from the US Marines on the coast to the Western Desert, where his Challenger tanks could be utilised more effectively. No sycophantic sidekick, de la Billière would push for British Special Forces to be used in Iraq prior to the invasion, and he managed to persuade Schwarzkopf, who had an aversion to Special Forces after his Vietnam experience, to utilise them. De la Billière convinced the American commander that the Special Forces would divert Iraqi forces away from the main area of battle and also provide surveillance on the critical main Baghdad to Amman road in Anbar. When Saddam started firing missiles at neighbouring countries, the mission would expand in scope to locating and eliminating Scud sites. In early January 1991, de la Billière wrote a letter of thanks to the editors of all the UK newspapers who had given the British Armed Forces generous moral and practical support over Christmas. He wrote, "Every newspaper published my letter, but the Daily Star went further and ran an article together with a recipe urging readers to bake cakes and send them to me for distribution to our troops. The result was astonishing. An absolute deluge of fruitcakes arrived in Saudi Arabia by the plane load, and I did my best to distribute them like Father Christmas whenever I flew by choice to visit troops in the desert, aircrew at RAF bases, or members of the Royal Navy Task Group at sea. Honesty compels me to record that the standing of cooking varied a great deal. Many of the cakes were delicious, but some were as hard as bullets and would have done considerable damage if used as emergency ammunition against the enemy." Speaking of cakes, de la Billière would try to work out every morning, which helped him maintain mental alertness and efficiency. Unlike de la Billière and his SAS blades, who were all as fit as butcher's dogs, when it came to PT, some of Saddam's top brass were more Andy McFlab than Andy McNab. Regarding the conclusion of the war and not going in to invade Iraq, de la Billière stated, "In my view, on the information that I'd got, I think it was ended at about the right time. There is a long argument to support this, and I think, give or take 2 or 3 hours, It was the right moment. His biggest relief was that the war was won with so few coalition casualties. After the Gulf War, de la Billière was promoted general and became special advisor to the Ministry of Defence on Middle East matters. He finally got to retire from active service in June 1992. His medals are, you can see here, a Companion of the Order of the Bath, awarded to him in 1982. Later, he received a Knights Commander of the Order of the Bath, a promotion, which is a breast badge. Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire, Distinguished Service Order for service in Oman, Military Cross with Bar, Korea Medal, United Nations Korea Medal, mentioned in dispatches. This is likely for his 1918 to 62 General Service Medal. In his pictures it's really hard to see, but I believe there's two clasps there. It could be any one of Canal Zone, Malaya, Arabian Peninsula perhaps, or Near East. Then we have the General Service Medal 1962 to 2007. That's likely got Borneo, Radfan, Dhofar and South Arabia as its clasps. Again, I'm not sure, and the examples here I've used on the internet, I haven't been able to find ones with those exact clasps, so they're just examples. Clearly for his General Service Medals, much of his work was covert, so it's really hard to tell where and when he was and what clasps he was awarded. Then we have Gulf War Medal, Jubilee Medal 1977. Foreign awards are Canadian Meritorious Service Cross, the Saudi Arabian Order of King Abdulaziz. This was given as a second class in 1993, I think as he was about to leave or he's left the military, so you won't see this on his ribbons while he's active service. And then finally, Chief Commander of the Legion of Merit. Although not allowed to be formally worn on British military uniforms, I believe he was also entitled to the Saudi Arabian Medal for the Liberation of Kuwait and Kuwaiti Liberation Medal. Clearly there could be other decorations or awards that he is entitled to, which I'm unaware of, so all I can say is I've given it my best shot from what I can see on open source on the internet. In his retirement, de la Billière became a best-selling author, writing a series of books including his own autobiography and an account of the Gulf War, which you can see here. There was a bit of controversy at the time about ex-Special Forces publishing books, but that's probably a video in itself. I believe you can find his books on Amazon and similar outlets. Due to his role in the public eye during the Gulf War, de la Billière became known to the British public for his leadership, courage and expertise. Globally, he became renowned as one of the most widely respected British commanders of the late 20th century. I have now been asked also to cover Michael Jackson, no, not him, General Sir Mike Jackson, so I will try to get around to that as well. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope you found some value from this, and I'll see you in the next one.